Google unveiled the Nexus 6P, a new version of its Nexus 6 smartphone with a slightly smaller 5.7-inch display and a completely new design. Nexus 6P design. The Nexus 6P is instantly remarkable because of its metal build. It has a full metal body, although that's broken by the black bar that houses the camera, and there's a section at the bottom that appears to be plastic, presumably to ensure that you always get a good signal, although it's body colored and barely noticeable. The metal body here is executed with some quality, bringing some differentiation to a family of handsets that's experimented with glass on the Nexus 4, but otherwise mostly stuck to plastic. The attention to detail is great, with laser-cut edges lending a real sense of the premium to the 6P. This is a large handset given the size of the display. The official measurements read out as 159.4 x 78.3 x 6.6 mm at the thinnest part, although there's a slight bulge towards the top of the handset, where the camera lies. Having caressed the Nexus 6P, we don't think that should be a make or break factor. You'll barely notice it. The Nexus 6P weighs 178 grams. What's more impressive, perhaps, is the overall construction. If you were doubting Huawei's ability to pull off a full metal body, then don't. The Nexus 6P is executed with aplomb, and it's great to see this lesser known, but massive, company dining at the Google table. Nexus 6P hardware specs. The Nexus 6P follows up a premium body design with hardware specs that match most flagships out there. Unlike the Nexus 5X that dips into the sub-premium bracket, the Nexus 6P will be gunning for devices like the HTC One M9, the LG G4 or the Samsung Galaxy S6. Under the hood there's a Qualcomm Snapdragon 810 v2.1 chipset with 3 GB of RAM. There's been some talk about this chipset throughout 2015 because of overheating concerns. Although we couldn't test this, after a period of playing Asphalt 8, we did notice the handset starting to warm up. It's worth remembering that this isn't final software, but it's certainly a point that's going to be closely watched come launch day. There's the choice of 32, 64, or 128 GB of storage, the latter capacity offering respite for those always worrying about a lack of space for big apps, especially games. There's a 3450 mAh battery under the skin, which is fairly capacious and should see the Nexus 6P shrug off some of the endurance woes that plagued some previous Nexus phones. You won't be getting Huawei's native battery management software, but Android 6.0 Marshmallow promises to offer more control over those apps that are consuming battery life in the background. There's no wireless charging on this model sadly, although you'll get fast charging through USB Type-C connection on the bottom, with Google saying it charges twice as fast as the iPhone 6 Plus. The reported stat is 7 hours of use from 10 minutes of charging. Also supporting the endurance is a new Android sensor hub. Like the Motion CO processor that Apple has often talked about in its devices. Nexus 6P display. The Nexus 6P display sits at 5.7 inches. It's slightly smaller than the namesake original Nexus 6, but sticks to the same resolution of 2560 x 1440 pixels, for a sharp 515 ppi. That means that the Nexus 6P is very much keeping up with the Joneses, like the Samsung Galaxy S6 or the LG G4 when it comes to resolution. The display is AMOLED too, and shows off the traits of that display technology. That means you'll get inky blacks and lots of punch and vibrancy to colors. Android Marshmallow's use of bold colors looks fantastic on this display. The Nexus 6P display is sharp, punchy and sizable, and we think it's going to go down a storm. Nexus 6P Fingerprint Scanner. One of the exciting changes coming to Android is the native support for fingerprint scanning hardware in Android 6.0. That's going to lead to a wider proliferation of this type of hardware on future devices. Fingerprint scanners aren't new to Android. There was one on the Motorola Atrix way back when, but in recent years they have become so responsive they're a joy to use. With this being a Huawei built device, it's worth being excited. The fingerprint scanner on Huawei's Mate S is excellent, and although we didn't have the opportunity to fully test the fingerprint scanner on the Nexus 6P, from what we've seen, it makes for a great repeat performance. Google has called the handling of fingerprints Nexus Imprint, with seamless integration into Android Pay, and you simply have to tap your finger on the back to register a fingerprint through the security settings. Nexus 6P camera. The Nexus 6P comes with a 12.3 megapixel camera, accompanied with a dual-tone flash. It also offers laser autofocus, but the real story here is the increase in pixel size to 1.55 microns. This is going to let more light into the sensor, with Google claiming that this is going to be one of the strongest low-light performers out there. It's difficult to even begin to assess the Nexus 6P camera performance from the time we've spent with it, but it's worth noting that the Nexus 6P comes blessed with some features that the Nexus 5X misses out on. One of those features is burst capture. Yes, that's not hugely exciting as it's been on every other Android camera for the past 2 years, but it's welcome nonetheless. But you also have slow motion video capture at 240 fps. That's an exclusive feature of the Nexus 6P. There's also an 8 megapixel front-facing camera, so you'll have plenty of detail for all those selfies, along with a new HDR mode for the front camera. Nexus 6P brings Android 6.0 Marshmallow. One of the main purposes of a Nexus handset is to be the delivery vessel of a new version of Android. In this case, the Nexus 6P ushers in Android 6.0 Marshmallow. We've seen a fair amount of what Android 6.0 Marshmallow will offer previously, through the Android M preview. It sticks to material design, so visually it looks a lot like Lollipop, and we think that's a smart move. There are improvements under the skin to change the controls you get over apps, both in terms of how they use power, how permissions are managed, as well as more granular notification controls. There's better volume controls too, which will be a welcome relief, alongside a new feature called Now on Tap. This latest addition to Android aims to bring Google Now to all areas of your device. With a long press on the home button, you'll be able to get Google results based on the context of the page you're looking at. First impressions. The Nexus 6P succeeds in bringing flagship specs to the Nexus family, competing with best you'll find from other Android devices. It does this with affordability, undercutting the sort of premium prices asked by Sony or Samsung. The 32GB Nexus 6P price is £449, the 64GB model is £499, and the 128GB model is £579. In the hand, this is certainly the most premium Nexus handset so far. The Nexus 6P is a worthy ambassador not only for a new run of Android features in Marshmallow, but as a showcase of what Huawei can do. When we reviewed the Huawei Mate S, we said it was time to take the company seriously. The Nexus 6P only concretes that notion. The Nexus 6P, on first impression, could make for a fantastic Android smartphone.